Well, hello, fellow fly fishers. Today I'm going to tie a European style nymph for you called the Frenchie. The Frenchie is a variation of a pheasant tail nymph. The pheasant tail nymph was developed in the 1950s. It's very popular all over the world. It represents a variety of different mayflies. So with the European nymph, it's meant to sink fast. So a lot of people will weight this fly with some lead. I'm not going to. I have a tungsten bead on here, 3mm tungsten bead. Tungsten is very dense. It's going to sink quickly anyway. So for the thread, I'm going to use an orange Vivus 12/0 thread. This is also going to be my hot spot. For the body, I'm going to use a pheasant tail. Natural, not dyed. For the tail, I'm going to use a Coq de Leon. Coq de Leon, as I've mentioned before, the fibers are very stiff and durable, and this will add some durability to the fly. I'm going to also do a couple things while I tie the fly that will increase the durability. So I'll get to those when we get to that point. I'll let you know. And I'm going to use shrimp pink ice dubbing for the collar. It almost looks orange. This is hot pink. This is shrimp pink. Some people find this difficult to work with. I'll give you a tip. You keep your fingers moist and you use it very sparingly, and you shouldn't have a problem. For the head cement, I'm going to use a water-based loon cement. It works well. It absorbs into the threads. And once it dries, of course, it doesn't matter if it gets in the water. It's just while you want to clean it up or while it's sitting in a curing. Okay, so I'm going to start my thread right behind the bead. I'm going to secure the thread, cut off the excess. I'm going to select about, for this fly, about 5 or 6 fibers from the Coq de Leon. So when you pull your fibers off, you want to orient them 90 degrees to the quill. That way it aligns the tips. So you want to align the tips, and that's the way you align the tips. So there's the fibers right there. There's about 5, or maybe there might be 4 or 5, but that's it. So you want to pull those guys off. And then about a hook shank length for the tail. So somewhere in there. Here's a tip. If you rotate the bobbin counterclockwise, the thread's going to jump back, as you notice. So it's going to help you tie. It's not going to jump off in front of the bead. It's going to stay behind the bead. So I can actually pull this around so it ends up in the slot. And as we get down to the tail, I do like to add, or I like to pull the thread behind the tail, pull it up tight. What that does is separates the fibers and lifts them up a little bit. I think looks a little more natural to have them separated and lifted. Let me get that. Oh, that's kind of what they look like. Then having a straight clump of fibers behind for the tail, behind the fly. So we're going to tie in for the ribbing. I'm going to use a hot yellow instead of gold or copper. Most people use copper. This is small size, so if I was going to tie a size 12, I'd probably jump up to a large or a brassy, maybe a brassy size. But for this fly, this is fine. And I like the hot yellow. It shows up very well. So let me tie that in. I like to put the excess into the slot. And we'll tie that down to the feather, or to the tail, sorry. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna tie in. Oh, for this size of a fly, we'll use about 4 or 5 fibers from the pheasant tail. And again, with the pheasant tail fibers, I will pull them off oriented 90 degrees to the quill. And then the pheasant tail fibers, the tips are brittle. So I cut those off. The reason for cutting them off is it's not for any aesthetic reasons. So when you start tying the fibers, they don't break. It doesn't break. Then you have to start over again. Not the end of the world, but it can be frustrating. Okay, I'm going to build up a little tiny taper with the thread. The pheasant tail quills, they actually get a little thicker the closer the pheasant tail fibers get a little thicker as they get closer to the quill. So that will help add a little taper too to the fly. Now, durability. Besides the copper or the wire, the hot yellow wire, I'll add one little drop of crazy glue, super glue, whatever you want to call it, to the thread and spread that around using a bodkin. And this will help with durability when this fly's hitting the rocks and other obstructions when you're fishing. So that's watch out for the tip of the hook too. You can cut your fibers. So be aware. I like to wrap right up behind the top of the bead. So I'll tie that off. A couple turns of thread, and I'll add one a couple in front of the bead, locks it in, lock those fibers in, cut off the excess. Now I'm going to counter wrap the wire. About 4 or 5 turns. Now, because I've counter wrapped, I'm going to keep some tension on the wire because it's wrapped in the opposite direction of the threads, or the thread. So I just keep a little tension, trap it down in there, and then I can helicopter it off. If you don't keep tension on it, there's a possibility that it will unwrap on the hook. So you'll lose your neat, nice spacing. Okay, now for the collar, I grabbed a very small amount of ice stub, and you want to get your fingers moist, and then it'll assist in applying the dubbing to the thread. Also, you don't go back and forth you don't roll back and forth. You just roll in one direction. Okay. Okay, so let me actually, and as you can tighten this as you go. Okay, and for the hot spot, we can whip finish the hot spot on. So we're going to just do about 2, 4, or 5 whip finish, 4 or 5 turn whip finishes, maybe a couple, and that will build up the hot spot. Okay. Cut the excess thread off. And I'm just going to apply a drop of head cement. And it will soak in. That was actually a pretty big drop. I probably didn't need that much, but that's what came off the end of the bottle. You can pull off these extra fibers, get rid of them. And anyway, that is Frenchie. Very good fly, to use. Let's say along with the Perdigon. You know, if you had a couple Euro nymphs in your box, those two would be good choices. Different sizes 12 to 16. Anyway, thanks for watching, and don't catch them all.